Hello and welcome to HR Bytes, everyone, a podcast and video series to bring you stories of HR professionals who bring a think globally and act locally digital HR agenda to their work. Everyday people who are driving digital transformations in their organizations, data-driven and future-fit digital HR leaders. This is your host, Jay Polaki, and today's guest is Michael Mullady. Hi, Michael. How are you today?
Hi, Jay. How are you doing?
Wonderful. So happy to have you on the show. And I'm going to ask you the same dreaded interview question. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, no, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I've been in HR for 20 plus years, right now, currently, and lately been an HR business partner. So really focused on supporting my clients and my groups within a kind of a corporate setting to better really meet the business needs and really understand what the business focuses and drives the people piece of that as we work through that. So currently I'm working for Genesis, which is a contact center solutions software company. Does pretty much if you call in or chat bot with customer service, a lot of companies use our software as you interact with them. So that's in a very broad nutshell what we do. We do a lot more, but that's the nutshell of that. So I've been in HR for a while. I'm involved in trying to make sure that I endorse the community and bring HR to the rest of the people out there who may have different experiences with HR. So I'd like to try to share those.
I know, 20 years, long time. You've seen it all, right?
Yes. It feels that way. Absolutely.
So given all the things that have happened over the past, year or so,
Yes.
and, how much we've had to become more agile, become more flexible in our HR function. How do you think the pandemic has accelerated the adoption of technology in your HR function or the HR function in general?
Yeah. Obviously, well, what we're doing here, right? Zoom and video meetings, I think, hit the accelerator faster than anything, I think anyone could imagine. I will say our company is kind of funny. We started using Zoom about a year before in 2019. So we had a good year or so of being used to Zoom before, the pandemic hit. So thankfully we didn't have to try to figure out how to use Zoom, but I think the piece that's, continual adjustment is, just being, what goes along with being virtual, for everybody and 24/7 and not really, not meeting in person. And how do you make those connections with new hires? How do you make those connections with new managers and teams? So that's the piece as we manage I kind of put the human piece to technology of, we want to leverage the technology. The technology itself isn't hard to use. It's how do we use it to make it a, kind of more human aspect of it. And that's, I think, I don't know. I would say over the course of the year, it's we're still working on that. I think it's a continual refined piece of it. I think depending on how long we thought the pandemic was going to last initially, it became hey, we can still do fun happy hour, fun things for a month or two. And then, when it realized it was going to be a significant gap of time, I think we've, had to readjust to how do we ensure engagement virtually as well.
Yeah, there's only so many Zoom scavenger hunts that we can organize and engage in, right?
Exactly.
So, you've already adopted Zoom by the time this pandemic hit us. What other technology were you able to implement during this time? And how did your social capital in your organization help you kind of bring this to implementation? Of course, the pandemic forced your hand, but in addition to that, you need the budget, you need people support from other departments. How did that work out for you?
So I would say it specifically us, I wouldn't say we did a ton of implementation in terms of new technology. I think it was, really leveraging a lot more of our learning management systems to kind of include more video. We really kind of leveraged some more vendors to kind of do a different dives into that regard. I would say, like I said, we doubled down a little bit even more on Zoom with a lot of different webinars and a lot of different trainings from that perspective. So the one thing that I think we tried very much to do is really focus on chopping things into smaller bites. So instead of people sitting through 2-hour long things, whether it's trainings, whether it's meetings, whether it's whatever it is, trying to make it a little bit more time efficient and making it maybe break it over different sessions or pre-recording things and things across that line so that people were able to A, be a little bit more flexible with their time, and B, not feel like they're sitting in front of the computer for hours on end as they going through different things. So that, I think that was the piece that we adjusted as we went through all of that.
I like the use of the term bytes because we are HR Bytes. And that's
well, yes, there we go. Right?
and that's what we're trying to do, right? Give people bite-sized information to take away from our conversation. And so it's so important, right, to keep people's attention for short lengths of time. So what one piece of advice do you have for HR professionals who are looking to adopt new technology in the midst of all of this? What would you advise them to do?
I think my advice in my experience is kind of the same regardless of the pandemic and everything else is two things. One is don't rush to make a decision, right? While you have to make sure it fits and solves a problem, picking the first thing without doing due diligence and other sort of things sometimes doesn't really work out well. So you don't want to rush it. And then secondly, I think you also as with any technology, it's never going to be 100% perfect, and you have to be willing to understand what areas are still maybe need to be shored up by something else, or you're still going to have to do, and be okay with it not being perfect. And I know any tech sales, they come in, they kind of tell you, oh, this is what it'll do and we can make it work. But, there's always a piece that never works exactly as either advertised or just based on the customization of your company. It's going to be different. So you have to be okay with that and just know that going in. So yeah, absolutely.
Great advice. So what do you think we as an HR function can do to prepare our workforce for this increase in remote work and working from home and the hybrid work environment that is here to stay? No matter what any pundit is telling us right now, this is here to stay, right? So what do you think?
Absolutely.
So what do you think we can do as an HR function to help our employees?
I think we have to, I think a few things. One, I think we have to be supportive of people not wanting to necessarily rush back to the office, regardless of, whether it's, they don't, they're still concerned about the pandemic, or, they've just been remote for a year or plus now, but depending on when you go back, and they might just be comfortable now working from home or working remotely. And I think we have to be supportive of what that looks like for the workforce, and not necessarily try to push everyone back into a building, or, or adjust to what that looks like. I think there'll be definitely a subset of people who are itching to get back around human beings, and will flock to the office immediately and hug everyone that they see. But I think there's also a subset that will say, you know what, I'm fine just being on the video. I'll see you guys if I have to, but otherwise I'm good sitting out here. So I think there's going to be managing and supporting those two very different polar opposites, and then of course everyone in between. And then I think the other piece is, because of that, we're then going to have to be very intentional about how we do meetings and how we are inclusive with people who, if a bunch of people are in a conference room and I'm sitting the only person who's on a video, a lot of times you're going to feel left out. No, that was always the case even pre-pandemic, but I think it's going to be very obvious, as we roll into people starting to get back. There's going to be this sense of, we don't want to flip the switch so far that we're leaving the virtual people out feeling that they're not included, or they're not part of the company just because they're not necessarily as in the office as often or at all. So yeah.
Absolutely. And that hyper personalization of the workspace and the work experience
Oh,
is definitely going to be, our challenge, I think, for 2021, right?
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there'll be a lot more people only going in a couple of days a week, or hotel, spaces and things like that. It's going to be a very, to some degree, a very different office environment than it was. So, yeah.
So, given all the upheaval in the workspace and in our own lives, what do you think is here to stay in terms of a workplace trend? Other than the Zoom shirt or the Zoom jacket.
Beyond the Zoom meetings, right? Exactly. Yes. No. You know what? I think I think there's going to be. I think what hopefully will continue is the ability to. One thing that I think this pandemic has brought about is the and everything else that's come along with 2020 is just the need for very intentional communication. Up, down, sideways, across the organization, and being much better at it than just expecting everyone to be on a meeting or on or just shooting emails and things like that. And so what I do think is here to stay is we've had a year plus, or hope, by the time as people kind of roll back in to get our muscle memory of how to be better communicators. And so I do think that leveraging technology or even just being more intentional about communicating and pushing our leaders and the organizations from an HR perspective to be better communicators, that's top. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So that brings us to the funner part of our conversation today, the question connection. And if you could answer as I shoot these questions to you, rapid fire. Ready?
Yes.
All right. Who's one person you've gained in your network in this past year that you think everyone in HR technology should know and learn from?
Oh gosh, I don't know. There's so many people great people out there. One person that I've I guess over the year or so that I've been following more on social media, Adam Karpiak. He's a recruiter. He's so involved and he's so supportive of the HR space and people and just job seekers, as well as just working through all the things that between giving back, as well as really being a positive influence and fun influence across the HR community. So I would definitely recommend, if you're not already following him, to follow him.
Absolutely. He's definitely fun to follow.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite HR podcast?
Again, there's a lot. I'd be remiss if I didn't at least give a quick shout out to the HR Social Hour podcast, because they're great, amazingly great people, John and Wendy. But another one also out there that I've most recently found within the last few months. It's called Inclusive AF, and it's and it's definitely one of the ones that I would recommend completely. It's Jackie Clayton and Katee Van Horn, and it's just really good. They really talk about what's inclusivity, how does that work within the workplace, how does HR kind of fit into that. So I would definitely recommend that.
And we'll link those in the show notes for the audience to follow. Yep. Any favorite LinkedIn Learning or e-learning courses that in HR technology that you think we should watch to learn from?
It's a good question. I've been thinking about that. I don't know that I don't know that anything comes directly to mind. LinkedIn Learning has a ton of great things out there. Some of the stuff that I enjoy when looking at LinkedIn Learning is really around not necessarily, I guess, technology, but from an HR perspective is how to keep constant learning. Like, how do you go about finding new ways to just learning something different. So for me, it's a lot of digging into kind of the talent development OD side and just constantly learning new attempts and new tricks on that and things like that. So I don't have anything specific, but I like to focus on that as a category, from that perspective.
Awesome. So. And I know you are involved in our HR community on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and you give back a lot. How else do you enjoy giving back to the HR community?
I really enjoy two things: celebrating people's successes. So, like, how do we lift up people, in the HR world um, who are doing good things, who are finding, whether it's moving to new roles or just really trying to do different things within the space. So I love kind of amplifying those voices and just kind of adding to that noise, and it kind of gives me a boost to see other people doing so well out there. And then I like reaching out and kind of working with kind of the entry level people in HR, and kind of giving back that perspective and giving them some perspective on what does HR look like, what is it really about, and just how do they break into HR, and those sorts of things.
Wonderful. Thank you for all the wonderful work you do in the HR community, and thank you so much for being on today's show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And if anyone wants to connect with you online, what's the best way for them to reach you?
So on Twitter, it's at MJ Mullady, and if there's a link to my LinkedIn as well. So yeah, absolutely, that's probably the easiest way.
Awesome. And I'll link those in the show notes. Thank you again so much, Michael. This was great. And audience, have a great week. We'll see you soon. And thank you for tuning in today. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.